power plays, physical, playing a team game, and knowing that their opponents were I wouldn't say afraid, but were second class, and the Boston Bruins didn't disappoint. I wrote in Community Leafs Convo YouTube channel before I checked out last night, like with a couple of minutes to go in the game. I said, oh my God, Mike is going to snap tomorrow. 26 responses, Mike. That's more than we usually get. Scott Jacob, yeah, well, I snapped already tonight. JP, what the F was that power play? You've got Rattlehead Vic, as he should. User, the core 0 points. Jason Sparks, Kiefer with Yarncroc on the power play ahead of Domi, and Bertuzzi is just playing. Well, I'm not going to use that word, but it was not too kind. Another user, Reeves scores a goal. LOL. Masikowski, watching this is demoralizing. And one more, Peter, CPR rail. Same old gutless drives to the outside and perimeter shooting. Wash, rinse, repeat. Mr. Augello, Leafs Nation's in a great mood this morning. Their team is down 1-0 to the rival Bruins. And you know what? The way you laid it out for us, Mike, before the series began, we should have expected it.
Good morning, Norm. Well, I wrote about this when I made my prediction on the series, because I said, if this happens and that happens and that happens too many times, it's not going to happen, because everything has to fall in place. And when everything has to fall in place, that normally does not occur. You can sell hope, but it just at a certain point, it's just not there. They needed Samsonov to play like he did up until the last week of the regular season. They needed to play physically, but play adult, like we said on the show when we previewed things. They needed to clear the front of the net, either on the penalty kill or 5-on-5, and they needed their core players to show up. None of that, not a one of that happened. Samsonov was bad. I mean, he was screened a bunch of times, but he was not great. The penalty killing was bad. They gave up 2 power play goals. The power play was 0 for 3 and pretty weak. The core group, Nylander was hurt. We don't know what the injury is. Marner was, didn't really notice him for half the game.
He was inconsequential.
Yeah, on the penalty kill, he was decent early on, but then they gave up the 2 power play goals. I think the 1 power play goal was late in the power play, so I don't think he was on for that. But he didn't really spark that second line with Tavares and Matthew Nyes. Matthews was, limited by Coyle for most of the night. He got his chances, but he wasn't able to register a goal.
Right.
And like I said, Ryan Reeves needed to be a physical force, needed to be a sheriff, needed to be like, okay, you're going to pull that stuff. I'm going to do that stuff to you, or do you play? What was the first thing that he did? Tried to make a hit when he didn't need to make a hit, took himself out of position, 2-on-1 the other way, goal by John Beecher, game over. And wow. He played 7 minutes and 31 seconds, and he was not a factor. And the guy cannot play and cannot be in the lineup unless he's a physical factor. I'm not blaming Ryan Reeves for the loss, right. But if he's in the lineup, he's got to be a physical difference maker. And this is the overshadowing thing about this performance. The Leafs come out in the first 9 minutes with their hair on fire.
Right.
Max Domi slashes back at Brad Marchand, and Brad Marchand is acting like he didn't do anything wrong when, probably called Max's mother some derogatory thing. But the Leafs were running around trying to be physical, trying to be tough. And then they sat back after 9 minutes, and the Bruins kept playing that way. It's natural. It's in the DNA of the Bruins to play that way. It is not in the DNA of the Toronto Maple Leafs. You can't just turn it on and then turn it off. You have to play that way from 20 minutes left to go in the first period to the end of the game. And they did not do that in game 1. Can they do it in the rest of the series? Sure. But do I think they will? No.
It's not who they are. This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. Whether you're looking for something new, used, SUV, truck, sedan, I've got it at Norman Oak Ridge Ford. I am your guy. There are lots of deals to be had in April. Trust me, especially on 2023 F-150. You need to reach out to me if you're looking for new wheels. I don't care where you're from. I have a massive client base across southwestern Ontario. Even if you're from the United States or out of province, let me help consult you and get you on the right track because, hey, even with gas prices being so high today, we still need to be on the road, Michael Augello. And if you're looking for electric, you don't want to pay gas, I can help you with that. And we do appreciate the sponsorship from Oak Ridge Ford, Mark Stevens in particular. I know he's not a happy camper this morning because he's as big a Leaf fan as there is, Mr. A. You mentioned in the last show, Mike, it's just not in them to play that way. Led by the core four, it's just not in them. It doesn't make them terrible hockey players. It doesn't make them effective in certain circumstances. But the way Boston plays is the way the Leafs need to play to go mano a mano with a team that just outclassed them from start to finish last night. Mike, you said that you were impressed by the Leafs start in the first 10, 15 minutes, playing with their hair on fire, coming out gangbusters. But Boston knew that was going to be the case. And they were able to lay in wait, deal with the onslaught, and then they pounced. And they didn't only pounce once, they pounced 5 times. 2 for 5 on the power play. The Leafs 0 for 3. Like, for goodness sakes, Boston on the faceoff dot just blew the Leafs away too. And I mean, you've got to have puck possession in the playoffs. Like I said, the brain tells you this isn't going to go well. The heart is always hoping that something can transpire that you're not expecting and can make you feel good about the results. Game 1 in, more of the same. It'll be on to game 2 here in the next few hours. I'm seeing Sheldon Keefe's name brought up a lot in the chat, Mike.
Yeah.
How do we implicate him in this early failure?
I mean, in the end, if they lose this series, he's probably out of a job. But I don't think strategically he did anything that cost them the game. He went with the 3 defensive pairings that I think that were playing the best at the end of the year. He went with the goaltender who carried them down the stretch. He lost his second highest scorer in Nylander. And, that absence is still shrouded in mystery because we don't know what happened. He played against Tampa Bay. He was, at the end of the game, was not injured. According to Chris Johnston's report, he just woke up with something, whether it's, a sore neck or a groin injury, we don't know. But it was enough to keep him out of game 1. I mean, hopefully that from their perspective, they think that it's something that can be treatable and that they get him in game 2. And if it was game 1 and, he hurt something even more, then they could have lost him for a longer time. I mean, clearly they need him in the lineup as a threat on the third line or maybe even on a overloaded second line, because I didn't think guys like Pontus Holmberg and Nick Robertson fit in a series against the Bruins. You have to have guys who are threats offensively and guys with size.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, there were very few forwards that played up to expectations. Matthews had some opportunities, but, Domi took stupid penalties. He was running around early in the game like he was his dad, and then that's, you can't be that way. And did
you expect anything else, Mike? When you are you're punching above your weight against a team that owns you physically and psychologically, what the hell else are you going to do? And I'm not making excuses for it, but we shouldn't be surprised by the way the Leafs came out. And again, they're human beings. They can want to do something and be incapable in that moment.
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but if they want to win, they have to. I mean, right. I think the statistic was at the end of the first period, the hits were like 25-23, and they should have really been down 3 or 4-0 because they gave up the 2-on-1 goal, and then Boston hit, I think, 3 posts in the first period. So,
can I just real quick pause you?
Yeah.
You mentioned, I mean, your opinion on Samsonov is that he wasn't very good, but I really don't think this loss was his fault. I mean, if he plays like that and the Leafs counter him with 2, 3, 4, 5 goals, I mean, it's a different story. I mean, we can't say, the number one reason this team lost last night is because of the goaltender, and then everything else was dog shit too.
No, I mean, okay, on 2 of the 3 goals in the second period, he did not have a clear vision of the front of the net. But you need your goaltender to stand on his head, and he didn't. And he didn't play well. He didn't make a save on the 2-on-1. He didn't make a save on point shots. I mean, those are positional saves, and they were not they were seeing eye shots. But if he's in the right position, I mean, I'm pretty sure they were both on the far side.
But it's not that his team enabled him to be that great last night, and he just wasn't able to fulfill his obligation.
Sometimes you need your goaltender to overcome those things. So could you say that you're expecting too much of Samsonov? Sure, but he was not up to that.
It was a complete team effort.
It was a complete team catastrophe. It was
carry on with your point, Mike.
Yeah, it was an abysmal performance by them. Now, can they come back from it? Sure. I mean, they we have to find out what exactly is the situation with Nylander.
Right.
If he's out for game 2, then you may not see him in the series, and then they're severely debilitated by his absence. He didn't score a goal in 11 games at the end of the regular season, but they're saying this is not a lingering thing. They're saying this is something that just popped up. So who knows? But again, I don't know what changes they can make to their lineup in game 2. I'll tell you this. If Samsonov, he's given up 16 goals in the last 3 games. If they lose in game 2, and we'll look at that in a minute, but if they lose in game 2, then Joseph Wall should start game 3.
So you're willing to wait until game 3 to make that adjustment?
Yeah, I think if they undercut Samsonov after game 1, after that performance, which you just accurately said, some of the goals were not on him, then you're not going to be able to go back to him for the rest of the series. You've taken his legs out in terms of his confidence. You have to go back to him and hope that he plays better and hope the team in front of him plays better. If they don't, then you have to change things up. And it may not be all on Samsonov, but you have to either go to Wall or go to Martin Jones, which would be an act of desperation.
Mike, can I just throw a couple of comments in from the OGs? Real quick, Jose Duarte and Timberwolf throwing some money at us. You don't have to do it. We appreciate it very much. It just shows your commitment to the project. We're committed to you. You guys are just absolutely phenomenal. Spike 11, take Robertson, Liljegren, and Samsonov out immediately. OG Chris Daniels, try Marner on the third line, and Wilfred Witzke. Hopefully Nylander and McMahon back for Monday.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic on McMahon because it looked like the injury when it occurred was an ankle. It could be a high ankle sprain. If it is, then he didn't skate. He didn't practice, so I don't know how severe the injury is. If it was not severe, I think he'd be in there. As for I understand and agree on the point that Spike, I think it was, when it comes to Robertson.
Yep.
I just don't think Robertson is a fit in this series. I mean, unless you're going to put him, if you move Marner down to the third line and you put Robertson up there with Tavares, and put him in a scoring role, but then you have to worry about the defensive issues when it comes to Robertson. He's small and he's not particularly good defensively right now. So that I don't know if that solves any issues. Liljegren, I'm sorry, where was there a problem with Liljegren other than he got throttled into the Boston bench by Pat Maroon? And the solution there is, okay, if you sit him out, then you're putting TJ Brody in, and then you have 5 lefties. So if you're doing that, then you're probably going to end up putting Brody back with Riley, and that was not a winning scenario for most of the second half of the season. So I think I don't think Liljegren was bad yesterday. And I wouldn't pull him out, but Samsonov, I think he's got one more game. If he plays badly, I think they're going to go to Wall.
What's driving me nuts, just unpacking what happened last night and just thinking about everything, the ramifications of success or failure and the implications for players and what's at stake, the history, what could happen next. it just feels it feels like the Leafs are just incapable of playing at this level against the team that has designs on not only making amends for their own failures, but bigger things. Like Jim Montgomery had his guys ready to play from the initial puck drop, and don't forget this Boston team shit the bed against Florida last year when they had set records in the regular season. So they have a lot at stake and a lot of things to prove to themselves. Why don't the Leafs feel the same way about where they are in the chronology of their development? It just does not appear that they have the same the same determination as a group that their contemporaries and during this period of time their adversaries do. This just again goes back to the makeup and the mosaic of the team and the personality on the team, and how the team was constructed, which makes me feel like after last night again that this group just is incapable of accomplishing the things that we would like to see our team accomplish. I'm sorry to say it, it's only one game in, but
Yeah.
I don't know how I can feel any other way.
Well, I mean, obviously, and if I had $1 for every critical or sarcastic comment that was on Twitter yesterday about the Leafs going out in 4 and them being gutless, I was getting text messages from people, and okay, it's one game, but Leaf fans have PTSD when it comes to the Bruins, when it comes to the playoffs. I mean, other than one series, this core group hasn't won squat, which is the reason why at the beginning of the year I was in favor of trading William Nylander, because they needed to change the mix, to get value for one of these guys if you weren't going to sign him. Well, they signed him. He wasn't there, and that was not because of anything that, he just gets injuries are a factor. And, but this team is so top heavy when it comes to production. They need those guys there. And if they're not there, or if they're less than 100%, then they have little or no chance to win. So the fact that, Tavares was a non-factor other than a couple shifts, that Marner really didn't do much, that Matthews is obviously the focal point of the Bruins defensive strategy, where they're putting out, Charlie McAvoy and putting out either Hampus Lindholm or McAvoy and Charlie Coyle. They're going to make his life a living hell. He's got to fight through that. The only way that they win this series is Austin Matthews producing.
Right.
He didn't. The only goal was scored was David Kampf. David Kampf in the third period when the game was already over with. If that happens, then they will lose in 4. Do I think that the core group will get on track? I do, but the question is whether they can do that consistently over a 4-game stretch, meaning 4 victories. And there is no evidence that this team can do that. Right. So until I see it, I won't believe it.
If you thought the Leafs were an underdog before this series and were punching above their weight to do anything worthwhile, try now. Being down 1-0, performing the way a lot of the skeptics thought you would perform, and seeing this Bruins team, the way they came out with the determination and the want to succeed and win, but also the want to put some closure on that failure to the Panthers in the first round of last Stanley Cup playoffs. This is going to be a tall order. Massatakis, Ford man out of Windsor, Detroit. I'll give the Leafs one more game to definitely count them out. Mike, those sentiments are shared Leafs nationwide. Last couple of comments and we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, and this is just sort of an esoteric thing, and I understand why they do it because it's good television. But I really wish they would stop with the shots of Maple Leaf Square, and every time Boston scores a goal, they show it, and you got a bunch of dejected fans, basically giving fingers to the camera. But when then with the Leaf score, it's like I understand why they do it. It's just, it's a sort of a tiring thing. especially for a team that hasn't won anything. It's like, you don't see that with any other market where they show like the fan base, and maybe it's it's a statement of how much this team means to the city of Toronto and Leaf fans everywhere.
Right.
But it's a reminder of how painful and how sort of pathetic this franchise is. They're making the playoffs and they just can't get any further. And it's not over. It's one game,
Right.
but there has to be a dramatic change in the way that this team plays. The way they need to play more even-headed, less emotional,
Right.
But consistently physical. Look at what the Bruins do, and that's what you have to meet. Florida beat them by beating them and playing it at their own game.
Right.
Kachuk and Bennett and Lomborg and Cousins, they were running Bruins players into the ground. Now, if the Leafs don't have a roster that can do that, then you have to, as Brad Treliving, you have to go out and get those players. And until you do, this team is not going to win a good goddamn thing.
I've said this a million times. If we're the same kind of team and we do the same things, and statistically we're on par, but I'm bigger and tougher and have more determination and more tenacious, I will beat you. And that is Boston over the Maple Leafs, not only last night, but throughout the season and into the last several contemporary playoff rounds, going back to the 50s. What is that, 7 years, Mike? So the Leafs have a lot to overcome. And your head tells you this isn't going to work out well. Your heart is hoping that something magical happens, and the Maple Leafs can at least get back into the series and make something out of it. I've seen Keith Pelly's name brought up a couple of times, taking over the conglomerate.
Right.
I don't want to eulogize the Maple Leafs just yet, because I guess we could, summarize the failure of another season with the potential positivity of a new leader making changes. But I mean, is he simply a figurehead, or do you think he'll make it a project to do what he has to do to I guess insert the changes to get the Leafs going down another path, and one that's potentially a path of more effective hockey in this generation? Last word to you, Mike Augello.
Well, based on his reputation, he's sort of a go-getter.
Right.
There's been a lot of chatter out there, sort of unofficial, that if this team doesn't make a run, that Brendan Shanahan's reign as team president might be over with
Right.
Pelly coming in. That's very possible. I mean, you have to be thankful that Shanahan did what he did 10 years ago in convincing the board at MLS needed to tank, because that got them Austin Matthews, one of the best players in the league. So, but this team has not been able to get to the next step with Mike Babcock, with Sheldon Keefe, with the group of players that they put together. It just has not worked. So, I mean, if they lose this series, more than likely Sheldon Keefe is done. And there's probably a 50-50 chance that Brendan Shanahan will not be team president anymore. The question is, will that make any difference? Well, who they bring in, who's the next coach? Will they change the roster? That's stuff that we'll talk about like next week or the week after, when we know where they are. But right now, after one game, it's probably premature just to go down that road. But it's understandable, because this team continues to play the same way when it comes time, when it counts, the real season, not the 82 games where everybody's padding their stats. Right. When it means something in the crucible of professional hockey, the playoffs, and this team doesn't show up.
Mm-hmm. When there's failure, we want victims, right? And we want people to be called on the carpet and be punished for that failure. It's happened and will continue to happen. The thing is, I mean, we can get that sense of I guess justification when we fire someone due to their connection to a failure. But when we're left with the core elements of that failure, and it's more difficult to rid yourselves of them than it is of, high paid executives or, coaches, you're still left with the problem, right? And if you want to make, the wholesale adjustments with a new vision, a new philosophy, that isn't something that's going to happen with a snap of a fingers and a firing. That's going to take a very long period of time. So, yeah, there are no major solutions. The only thing we can do as a fan base is buckle up for game 2, and maybe there's some joy in it. Maybe the Leafs pull it out in overtime and make a series out of this, and we can get what we need out of this second season, because we don't get to enjoy this for too long historically. And the way everybody feels right now is pretty down. But I mean, there's another game to go. The series isn't over yet. We just try to enjoy it the best we can and enjoy the content that Mike and I provide for you. Like the content, subscribe to the channel. Check out oakridgeford.com for your next car. Mike at hockeybuzz.com. I'm sure you are not being too kind to the Maple Leafs, and you're kind of breaking down the game. Am I right with that assessment?
Well, usually on Sundays we post the podcasts, but Monday in a preview of game 2, I will excoriate them as I did on this show for the way that they played, and they need to play differently. And if they don't play differently, it's going to be a quick out, and it's going to be a summer of discontent.
Right. We expect better, but we know who they are. And deep down, do we really believe they're capable of the things we want them to accomplish? OG's Converse, you can wrestle with that. For Mike, I'm Norm. Enjoy your Sunday. Game 2's a coming. This is the Leafs Convo. And for now, we are out.